Everybody understands what we mean by our local sphere of influence? Who said no? Okay. I'll review. Your local area, your local sphere of influence, your local range of perception is limited to the 5 senses: what you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Or it is limited to your 5 senses as augmented by technology. With a cell phone, with an airplane, with a television, with a radio, you can extend your senses. And so, as we say in the modern society, the world is shrinking. Everything is local, because technology has brought Iraq into our bedrooms. Technology has brought Nike shoes from China into our closets. Technology has brought saffron spices from the jungle into our pantries. Technology has brought fresh fruit year-round into our refrigerators. And so the world has shrunk. Or in another perspective, with the aid of modern science and technology, our local range of perception, our local sphere of influence has increased. It's now global. And so when we fill up at the pump, our SUVs, we're supporting the war in Iraq. Right. Okay, so if this is how we define local, then what would non-local be? Everything else. Simple answer. Turn to your partner. This is an easy one. We know what local is, so what's non-local? Everything else. Everything outside of our range of perception, of our range of influence, as defined by our senses, as we learn them in high school physiology. Now, based on the definition of local and non-local, where would you classify the sending and receiving exercise you did yesterday? Was that local or non-local? How many say non-local? How many say local? Okay. Well, it's relative. Because from the perspective of a physical body and 5 senses that is only limited to 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time, according to your model of reality you learned in high school, sending and receiving is a non-local experience because you didn't look with your eyes or listen with your ears to receive the information that you received. And yet, based on the model of multiple dimensions, multiple realities, multiple bodies, and multiple levels of awareness, if you move up the mountain, your view is increased. And so sending and receiving becomes a local activity to one of the other bodies. Something beyond the 5 senses, located on the extremities of the body, because you go within to another sense that's facilitated by the midbrain. And yet, according to modern definitions in science, sending and receiving is a non-local activity because they haven't mapped the inner world so well as they have the outer world. And they have mapped sending and receiving and non-locality. And it began back in the 1930s with Einstein and a bunch of other scientists. But to fast forward all over the boring details, by the 1970s, quantum mechanics had validated the theoretical model of non-local connections, non-local interactions. And they had demonstrated in the laboratory that subatomic particles, electrons, protons, photons, even large molecules, were capable of interacting non-locally. And so if you had 2 particles that came together for a moment and interacted, and one flew off, particle A went that way at the speed of light, particle B went that way at the speed of light, and then you measured or observed or affected particle A, instantaneously particle B was also influenced, no matter how far away it was. Now, classical science, back to the days of Newton, said that's not possible, can't do that. because you don't have that kind of connection. And relativity says, no, you can't do that because that violates the speed limit of the speed of light. But they did it anyhow. Yay. And everybody in the New Age community in the 1970s and 1980s, Tao of physics, dancing Wooly masters, they all said, hooray, science says it's okay to be psychic. And the scientists said, no, wait a minute. We said it's okay for subatomic particles to do this. It's okay for electrons to have non-local interactions. We didn't say anything about big human beings being able to do it. It took until 1994 for science to get caught up with that. In 1994, a University of Mexico researcher had spent 3 years with this process where he brought graduate student A and graduate student B and had them focus on each other for a little while. And then he took student A and he put him in a darkened room, a shielded, electromagnetically shielded room, so he couldn't cheat, hooked him up to an EEG to measure his brain waves, hooked him up to some other things too. And he took graduate student B to the other side of the laboratory, or to the other side of the campus, put him in a darkened room with electromagnetic shielding so he couldn't cheat, hooked up his brain wave. Is this beginning to sound a little bit like sending and receiving? It should. Now, the neat thing about Jacobo Grinberg Zilberbaum, that was the professor's name, is he didn't ask partner A and B to send or receive anything. He was only interested in the brains of partner A and partner B. He wanted to see if the brains had the physiological apparatus between the ears to maintain a non-local connection. He didn't care about information. He just wanted to prove that the brain had that ability, that it had the mechanics, that it had the hardware. And that was the beauty of his experiments. And so what he would do to partner A is he would shine bright lights, or he would play a loud burst of music, or he would stimulate the fingertips with mild electric shocks. And of course partner A is going, whoa, this is the roughest 100 pesos I've ever made. And then all the while his brain's recording the blips and it's going bloop, 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 right? Because the brain's responding to the stimulus in the cage, in the environment. Meanwhile, partner B's over here on the other side of the campus going, this is the easiest 100 pesos an hour I've ever made. And he's just sitting there enjoying the quiet. But his brain is going bloop, bloop, bloop. And he's unaware of it. And so when they compare the two EEGs and they synchronize them in time, every time partner A's brain responded to a stimulus in the environment and made a bloop on the EEG, partner B's brain had a bloop as well. And so brain A, when it was interacted with, caused a simultaneous interaction to occur in brain B. Turn to your partner and tell them the staggering implications of this experiment.